Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. This has no doubt been one of the strangest years for legal decisions and opinions written by different courts in this country. And today we have one that simply defies imagination. And it comes from the Kansas Supreme Court. It has determined that there is no right to vote as enshrined in the Kansas Constitution. Now, you may be thinking, silly you, that this Article 5 from the Kansas Constitution dealing with suffrage, which we all recognize means the right to vote, says qualifications of electors. Every citizen of the United States who's attained the age of 18 years and who resides in the voting area in which he or she seeks to vote shall be deemed a qualified elector. If that does not demonstrate that there is a right to vote, I don't know what there is. But even down here, it says proof of the right to vote, the legislature shall provide by law for proper proofs of the right of suffrage. So, obviously, if they have a section in the Constitution that says proof of right to vote, there is a right to vote. You know, I think sometimes people I think in order to reach a particular result, sometimes courts wind up twisting in the wind because their opinion just really doesn't make a lot of sense. So you're probably wondering how this all came about. Well, the Kansas Supreme Court was asked to deal with a ballot signature verification measure. And so, in doing so, they said there's no right to vote enshrined in the Kansas Constitution's Bill of Rights, and that drew fiery dissent from 3 of the court's 7 justices. Now, the measure requires that the people who govern elections, the registrar of elections or whoever that is, have to match the signatures on mail-in ballots to a person's voter registration record. So if John Doe has voted absentee and you've got his ballot, you have to go pull his voter registration card and you say, it looks very similar to what he signed on the card, so we're going to approve that vote. And if John Doe's signature doesn't look the same, well, in that situation, you throw the ballot out. The Supreme Court reversed a lower court's dismissal of the lawsuit, but rejected arguments from voting rights groups that the measure violates state constitutional voting rights. Now, the reason that the litigants here adopted a state constitutional approach to the right to vote is that federal cases have already held that certain voter registration procedures and signature verification are allowed under the U.S. Constitution. So, that got me thinking, where is the right to vote in the text of the Constitution? And guess what? It's not there either. The U.S. Constitution does not explicitly grant a universal right to vote. The right to vote may simply have been taken as a given. But several amendments do provide protections against disenfranchisement based on specific criteria, thereby ensuring more inclusive voting rights. Key amendments related to voting rights include the following. The 15th Amendment from 1870 prohibits the state and federal governments from denying the citizen the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The amendment says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This was passed right after the Civil War, and it was designed to allow freed slaves the full measure of participation in the government. Now, of course, that didn't really happen, at least not immediately. It took about another 100 years for that to really come about. But this was what the Constitution said, even though most of the time, at least in the early 19th or early 20th century, that didn't come about. Now, the 19th Amendment was passed in 1920 and it extends the right to vote to women, prohibiting any U.S. citizen from being denied the right to vote on the basis of sex. It says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. But of course, like a lot of things that people do when somebody passes a law, they try to figure out a way to get around them. Many of the southern states imposed what was called a poll tax in federal elections. In order to vote in a federal election, you had to pay the poll tax. Now, these are generally regarded as Jim Crow laws, and as a result of the Jim Crow laws and these poll taxes, a lot of people, when they got to the ballot box, were told, hey, you didn't pay your poll tax, you're not voting. So the 24th Amendment, which was passed in 1964, at or around the time of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, which essentially established the cause of action for discrimination, the 24th Amendment was passed, and it says the right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for the president, vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. Then the 26th Amendment in 1971 lowered the voting age in federal, state, and local elections from 21 to 18. And it says the right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. So all of those go directly to the right of voting. The 14th Amendment includes the Equal Protection Clause and the Privileges and Immunities Clause, which have been interpreted to protect voting rights. It says no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, these constitutional provisions were again trying to eradicate many of the things that were used to prevent slaves and former slaves from full access to the rights granted to citizens of the United States. Again, they haven't always been upheld, but this is what the Constitution says about it. Now, while those amendments don't explicitly create a general right to vote, they collectively work to protect and expand voting rights by prohibiting these specific forms of discrimination and ensuring broader access to electoral processes. The right to vote is also recognized as fundamental in various Supreme Court rulings, which has emphasized the importance of voting in a democratic society. So, if you read the Kansas opinion very generally, what it means essentially is that people who are voting in Kansas are voting according to the right granted to them by the United States Constitution, not by the right spelled out in Article 5 of the Kansas Constitution. I'm not sure how they can go about making that distinction. I really am not. The opinion is interesting because it deals with something that the judges wanted to uphold, but another part of the opinion, which essentially abridged free speech, was also struck down by the state Supreme Court. So I think it was a pretty clear case of them trying to be Solomon-like and splitting the baby, except to get to the point where they split the baby, they ignored the language directly in the Kansas Constitution in order to make that ruling. You don't see too many opinions like this, and I'm not going to pull the opinion up and dissect it because I don't think it's really necessary. This is really pretty clear, and I don't know how you get to this point where you say there's no right to vote enshrined in the Constitution when you have an article directly on point. But sometimes judges do what they have to do in order to get to the place where they want to get. I think it was a bad call, but here's the interesting part. The principles of federalism do not allow the United States Supreme Court to overrule the Kansas Supreme Court in this decision. The only thing that can affect that would be the appointment of a new justice at some future point in time, and then perhaps the Kansas Supreme Court and their errant opinion here could be addressed. Before I finish, I want to offer a little editorial here. And that is, you have a right to vote in this country if you're a citizen. And you should register to vote. You should do it immediately if you haven't done it already, because our elections are determined by people who vote. People who don't vote effectively do not participate in this great experiment we call democracy, or in the proper name being a republic, a representative republic. When we vote for the people who represent us, we are saying something about ourselves. We're saying something about our beliefs and our core values. Now, I don't care what your core values are, but you have a right to stand up for them, and you have a right to vote on the basis of those core values. And if you don't, you abdicate a key component of your citizenship in this country. I believe very strongly in the right to vote. I have voted in every presidential election during my lifetime, and I vote in all of the other elections that come up, whether it's for senator or congressman or mayor. I vote in those elections because those things matter to me. More importantly, we just got through with Memorial Day. My Uncle Victor Gower, died at the Battle of the Bulge in December of 1944, and he died, along with hundreds of thousands of others of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. He died to protect our right to vote for who we want representing us. Don't disrespect that by not voting. Take the 15 minutes that it takes to register to vote. In many states, you can register online. In other states, you can register when you get your driver's license renewed. There are so many different ways to register. They try to make voting easy, and they extend voting hours. They extend early voting so that you can vote early. All of these things make it easier. And there's a key reason why voting should be easy. Your vote is your voice in how this country is run. Don't be silent. Well, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below or email me. I have been pretty busy this week. I haven't been able to get to a lot of the email that you've sent, but I have read it. I do appreciate you guys chiming in, and I'm sorry that the limited number of hours that I have to work on this every day impacts my ability to respond, but I do very much appreciate all of the engagement that I get on the channel. If you have the opportunity today, do something nice for someone, and then come on back tomorrow and catch us down here at the beach, and we'll talk about something else fun. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.